It's time to take a step beyond. The podcast to inspire creativity and imagination. Here's your host, Dr. Anthony Poston.
Thanks for tuning in to A Step Beyond. So let's begin today's show with a question. What do John Cougar Mellencamp, Sir Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, the Rolling Stones, Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars, Sting, Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Bob Seger, Dave Grohl, Elton John, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, John Bon Jovi, Steven Tyler, the Smashing Pumpkins, Meatloaf, B.B. King, Rod Stewart, John Fogerty, and many, many, many others all have in common, other than being rock stars? Well, our guest today has played drums for all of them at one time or another. And you will frequently see him on TV as the bald guy drummer sporting the dark sunglasses. Not only has Rolling Stone magazine listed him as one of the greatest drummers of all time, he's one of the most sought-after drummers in the business who's always traveling somewhere in the world, playing live with someone, or working in a studio somewhere recording with someone else. In between banging his drums, he's speaking and presenting to people, trying to help them gain confidence in both their professional and personal lives. And when he's not doing all of that, he's writing books. He's the author of Sex, Drums, and Rock and Roll, the hardest-hitting man in show business. Ladies and gentlemen, the drum wizard himself, Kenny Aronoff. Kenny, welcome to the show.
I love it being called the drum wizard. That's the first time I've been called the wizard, but I'll take it.
Man, I've heard you play. You're a drum wizard. You are.
It's not the Wizard of Oz, it's the Wizard of Drums.
The Wizard of Drums. Hey,
I love it.
Yeah, so let's get right into your story. I believe it was 1964 when you first knew you wanted to be a drummer, right? Talk about that.
Yeah, I saw the Beatles on TV. I was playing outside with my brother, and my mom yelled at us to come inside, and there was nothing to watch on TV back then. And it was I thought I was in trouble, but there was on our black and white TV set was the Ed Sullivan Show, and there's four guys, the Beatles, performing, and I was just went bouncing off the walls. It was like I'd never seen anything like that. I had never felt anything like that. So I asked my mom, who are those guys? And she said, they're the Beatles, and I naively asked her to call them up and get me in the band. And obviously she didn't do that, and so I was just I couldn't. I mean, you know me enough to know that when somebody says no, you just go, okay, well then that door shuts. I'm going to open up another door, and if that door shuts, you open up another door. So I couldn't get in the Beatles, so I started my own band, and I played Beatles songs, and that was just fun, and I enjoyed it, and I thought I was a rock star at 11 years old. But the cool part about that story is 50 years later, I was asked to perform in a selected house band in Los Angeles for a CBS TV show called The Night That Changed America, and it was honoring the Beatles for that Ed Sullivan Show that 72 million people saw. And so I got to with the two remaining Beatles, Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney.
And that is totally cool. I mean, it's kind of like coming full circle in your life. You start off watching them as a kid, dreaming about doing that, so on and so forth, and then who knows, who would have thunk it, back at that time. But there you go, 50 years later, full circle, you're actually playing with the ones that are still alive.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I tell people when I speak in my speeches that, dreams do come true, but it didn't come by accident. And I know you know this for sure from our talks. You make your destiny. You get breaks, but you can't count on them. You have to make your success. And I am the perfect example of that. Rolling Stone named me, one of the top drummers of all time. But man, there's so many great drummers out there. They wouldn't even know who I was if I wasn't the guy working my butt off and constantly persevering and pushing the envelope and. For 4 decades, really. I mean, that's after I became well-known in the Mellencamp band, but I've just been working since I was 18. I was practicing 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, out of fear that I was going to fail. But that type of discipline and perseverance over a long period of time has kept me it's made me successful and kept me successful.
Well, let's talk about that discipline and perseverance for a second. Okay, so unlike many rockers who start off playing in bands when they're young and just keep playing those bands their whole life, unlike many rockers, you actually studied classical and jazz music in college at Indiana University's Jacobs School of Music. You spent a summer at the Aspen School of Music, which is run by the Juilliard School, and you spent a summer in the fellowship program at Tanglewood, which at the time was run by the Boston Symphony Orchestra, where you got to work with some pretty famous conductors like Leonard Bernstein, Aaron Copland, and Arthur Fiedler. So you read music. I mean, unlike a lot of drummers in rock bands who can't read music, you read music, you chart it, you document everything you do, right?
Yeah, I'm one of the most detailed chart. I don't know anybody who writes charts as detailed as me, but it took a long time to get that skill to the level of where I'm at now, and then to be able to the next level was to be able to read that music and make it sound like I'm not reading, and that's a skill in itself. You have to sort of step out of yourself and observe the way you sound with the band, or whether you're recording live. And I ask myself, am I sounding like I'm in the flow? Or do I sound like I'm reading and I'm academic? And so it was Melissa Etheridge that noticed that, because I had to learn a 3-hour show with only 9 hours of rehearsal because I was so busy recording that when I went on tour I had to read, and she mentioned that, and that was the point where I went, wow, I've got to be able to read but make it sound like it's natural and memorized. Now the advantage of reading is, I can handle 10 projects at once. Right now I'm writing out a recording I did, Pink Houses by John Mellencamp, because I'm recording it, the actual song, every note I played on that record I'm going to duplicate with a session with Lita Ford and, Rudy Sarzour, who played with, Ozzy and, White Snake and a couple other bands. We're recreating it for somebody else. And I'm writing 2 charts for two songs that somebody sent me from Switzerland. It takes me maybe, 45 minutes for each song, and then I go in the studio and I can just sight read it. Now I'm playing 8 songs on Tuesday, Zeppelin songs they're honoring me at the Whiskey A Go Go. It's a Zeppelin night. So, if I have, most of the songs they're memorized, but I can pull out the music and look at it, and then I'm handling another project and another project and another project, and when I do TV, like the Kennedy Center honors, you can't do it unless you read, because they're making changes up until the last second, and they're going to have a 16-camera shoot, and they're going to record it and film it, and you're playing with Sting and Bruce Springsteen and, Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars and all the rest, and you can't make a mistake, and you can't rely on memory. There's not enough time.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think musicianship is appreciated in rock and roll?
Yes, I do. I think, when you start talking about people like Sting, Chris Cornell from Soundgarden or Audioslave, or Lady Gaga, or even Bruno Mars, Springsteen, these people are are amazing. And then you get into more technical people, like Herbie Hancock or Chick Corea. Their skill level is way beyond average.
Okay, so then let's talk about how you transitioned into this. After college, you were part of a band that, like most bands, they weren't successful. So yours wasn't successful, and because it wasn't, and you mentioned this before about opening new doors, that opened a door to an audition that changed your life. Talk about that. Yeah,
well, back up just a little bit. I did what I call the American dream, which is, you go to school and you learn a skill, and then you get a job in that, the area, your career that you studied for. And in my case, it was classical music. I got into the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra. Huge, big deal, because there aren't that many orchestras that available, for people. Because once you get into the orchestra, you hold your position. Anyway, I get in and I turn it down. I decide I really want to follow my heart, which was the original dream was to be in a rock band like the Beatles and make records and tour. So I go home and I'm studying with 2 guys, one in Boston, one in New York, humbly living in the house I grew up in, practicing 8 hours a day. And then I moved back to Indiana, where I'd studied for 4 years, classical music and started a band, like you said. We had one of the dads invested money, $30,000, and we bought PA, sound, lights, truck, you name it. Didn't happen, and now it's been 4 years of me trying to execute a plan that would reach my goal, and I hadn't yet. So I'm frustrated, and the door closes, and I'm going to go to New York. And right 2 weeks before I was going to go move to New York, I hear about this guy. The singer-songwriter tells me there's this guy, Johnny Cougar, who is looking for a drummer. He had just fired his drummer the night before. The drummer quit. And I was thinking, oh, I know that guy. He's on that new TV show, MTV. And I'm thinking, he's on the radio. And, I wasn't a fan of his yet, and because I was trying to play more complex music, and his was more radio-friendly, heartland, simple, right to the point. I didn't understand his that type of style of music to the level I would need to be in the band. Anyway, the bottom line is I start thinking, oh my God, this is sitting right in my lap. He lives in Bloomington, Indiana. I live in Bloomington. Nobody would go to Bloomington to make it, but here I am. I get his last record, memorize every note, practice, my 6 to 8 hours a day, so that I knew every song by memory. I walked in, crushed the audition, and get the gig. And the wild thing is, when I only played 2 songs, and that was enough. And John went upstairs while I was packing up my drums, and he called up the guitar player to come upstairs. And 10 minutes later, the guitar player comes down. He's smiling at me, shakes my hand, and says, "Welcome to hell."
Well, and there's a rumor that he has a reputation of being a bit of a jerk. Is that true?
He's very intense, especially back then.
I like how he uses intense instead of jerk. It's great.
Hey, I can't be quoted. You said it.
No, I know. I've also read it repeatedly.
Yeah, I know. Well, listen, he named himself the little bastard. He knows.
All right, let's go back to saying intense. He's intense.
He's intense, but and I wouldn't have said that except that he said it. He knows exactly how he is, but he was the type of guy who said, when I got in the band, he'd say, "Look, I write these songs, but they all sound the same." He said, I need you guys to come up with parts to make these songs hit singles. And then, as a matter of fact, Kenny, if somebody can come up with a better beat than you, then you have to play it. Nobody owns their instruments in this band. Everybody has, it's all about coming up with ideas and making hits for me. Now, I thought he was a jerk back then, was saying that, but now I realize, really, those are great team skill, serve the song, serve the team type of concepts, because the ultimate goal is to get a song on the radio to be number one, because if it is, the corporation, in this case John Mellencamp, makes millions and millions of dollars, and then the record label makes even more, because they're getting 82 cents on the dollar, or even 85 cents on the dollar. And me, I'm just on salary. So, but he was right, even though he was a jerk about it. He was right. He was screaming, for help. And we would rehearse from 11 in the morning to 5 at night, take a dinner break, come back at 7 at night to 11 at night as a business, 5 days a week. And back then there were budgets, so we had just enough money to live. We were all renting little apartments, and it's Bloomington, Indiana. It's not, L.A. or New York, so we could afford it. And we were a band. That's how you got better. But John was constantly pushing it, and I didn't understand back then how it works, but later on I realized, and I say it in my book, he was being intense, but he had already lost his record deal once, and he was in fear of losing it again. And the way the record business works is that you're as good as your last single, and we've seen a lot of bands come and go. They have one hit, and that's it. And John knew that. And because John had lost his record deal, not only did he lose his record deal, but the record that came out before he lost his deal, they had changed his name from John Mellencamp to Johnny Cougar, which he hated. And, he grew up in the Rust Belt in the Midwest. You don't go home and tell your uncles that lay concrete and your dad, who works for an electrical company, that your name is now Johnny Cougar. They're like, what's wrong with Mellencamp? it was, he was embarrassed. And then he gets dropped, and now his name is Johnny Cougar, and he has no record deal. So when he got a new record deal, he was fighting for his life. And as soon as an album would come out and we'd do okay, we were back in the studio writing right away, coming up with the next thing. And then, so when he smelled blood, man, he was on it. And we did this for 8 years, and went from playing in, clubs to 2,000 seat arenas to 5,000 to finally we were playing in sold out 18, 20,000 seat arenas with no opening act, and we became huge rock stars.
I have to laugh because I remember back in the 70s, I was a kid. I mean, this is early 70s, and we were going through our neighbor's trash or something, and we found a Johnny Cougar album.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
So somebody had tossed it. It's like, and on the cover was him in a leather jacket trying to look all like Fonzie,
yep.
Arthur Fonzarelli, and
yeah, I know that. I know exactly that jacket.
Yeah,
that cover.
Yeah, I remember that vividly. So, okay, here's a story. There's a story that when you were working on the very well-known song Jack and Diane, you were trying to figure out some way to punch it up with the drums, which you did a marvelous job, by the way.
Thank you.
Someone handed you an electric drum machine. Those were new back then. They were coming out.
Right.
And so, what were your thoughts about that machine when it came out?
Well, the thing that was, to show the story in a visual way, we were all in the Criteria Studios. It's like 1982, and we are trying to make this record, and it was real painful. I mean, two guys got fired. John almost got in a fist. Me and John almost got in a fist fight. He was fighting for his career. I didn't know this, and I thought, God, what a jerk! He's so angry and uptight. I was just happy to be in the studio. Now, somebody walks in with this metal box. It's the co-producer, Don Gaiman. And I go, what's that? And he says, well, it's a Lin 1 drum machine. I said, what are you going to do with that? And he said, we're going to use it on that song that, is off the record because we don't know what to do with it, how to present it, to make it a hit single. And I went, are you kidding me? I'm going to be replaced by a drum machine? Now, let's go back 2 years. When I first got in the band in 1980, 5 weeks after being in the band, we were in L.A. making a record, and I told everybody in the world I was going to L.A. I finally made it in this rock star band. I mean, I couldn't have been happier. But after 2 days, I was basically asked to go home and you're not playing on the record. And we had a meeting in this room in the hotel, and when John said that, I just literally said, no, I'm not going home. That'd be like telling the Marine sergeant, after he asked you to do 100 push-ups, you tell him no. I mean, you don't say that to John. And I was scrambling, man. That's when I realized I was a fight-or-fight guy, not a fight-or-flight guy. When John told me to go home, I basically started to negotiate a deal that would benefit the both of us, which was like, I asked him if I'm your drummer. He said, well, yeah, but you're not playing on the record. I said, well, I'm not going home. I want to watch these other drummers play my parts, and I'll learn from them and benefit from that. And then you'll benefit because I'm still your drummer, and you don't have to pay me, which was probably the deal breaker. And I did learn a lot. All right, let's go back to 2 years later. I had made a commitment and vow that I would make the next record. So when they walked in with a drum machine, I thought it triggered those horrible nightmares of being told to go home. So I grabbed the machine, and I said, well, I'm going to program it. And so I basically took my beat that I was playing on the song and programmed it. Instead of hi-hats, I used tambourine on the drum machine. And instead of bass drum, a kick drum, I used a tom-tom sound and stuff like that. Then I gave the machine back to them, and I went back into the lounge and played pool and was really, angry, like, damn, I'm being replaced by a machine. This is horrible. This is no way to make a record. And then all of a sudden, I'm summoned 2 hours later to go into the control room. And, this is John Mellencamp. So he's saying, we need a drum solo. And I'm thinking, a drum solo on a slow song, a ballad, it just doesn't, all right, but it doesn't make sense. And I talked about learning how to serve the song. I was learning now how to serve the song, how to come up with beats that serve John's music, that gets it on the radio, that will make hit singles and make, him famous. If he's famous, I become famous because I'm in the band. And I didn't know any of this in that first record. That's why they, was one of the reasons why they replaced me. So I come up, long story short, I I ultimately came up with a beat, that saved the song and made it John's biggest hit single. But there was one moment where I was at a dead end, and I tell this story of how I'm in the control room, and everyone's trying to tell me what to do, and I'm thinking, I'm nervous, and I'm terrified I'm going to get replaced. And I'm thinking, no matter what these guys say, I got to go out there and deliver. It's like, and a lot of their ideas weren't that good, but nobody came up with something that was like, this is it. And I'm walking back to the drum set, and I'm going, you got 40 feet to save your career, Kenny. Now 30, what are you going to play? And I'm like, I don't know. 20, 15, what are you going to play? Dude, you're at the drums now. 10, 5, what are you going to play? I don't know. And my back is to the drum set, which is to the control room, and I'm thinking, this is it, man. Do or die. And I turn around, and they're all looking at me, 9 of them. I sit the drums, and I basically took the same idea that I'd been using, put a little spin on it. Instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, I just took the same idea and just displaced it, played a little bit later. Ultimately, I came up with this big drum beat, that solo, which is basically it's a musical phrase that everybody air drums now. And then they were so excited they told me to keep playing a groove. Long story short, the song is a huge success, launched my career, his career. But I was in fear when it went to number 1 because I realized, man, how am I going to do this again? I mean, and I was right to think that way because at that point, John demanded me to be able to do it again. And so for the next 17 years, I kept coming up with the right, cool beat for his songs to get played on the radio. And I played on all the big hits.
Well, and after Mellencamp, you've worked with or are still working with John Fogerty.
I went. Well, what happened was in 1988 was the end of 8 years of nonstop. 8 years of nonstop touring, recording records, promoting records. He quit. John quit all of a sudden out of the blue, and he was. I didn't know it then, but he was burnt out, and he had a lot of money. He made a lot of money. I just gotten divorced and just had a kid, so I was concerned about if John said he was going to take 3 years off, and I believed him. He didn't, but I believed him. It sure sounded like he was going to do it. He was very, very clear about it. So I went to L.A. and pounded the streets again and worked my butt off to try to become a recording session drummer because I was already making a few records while I was still in the Mellencamp band. And the bottom line is I did. I eventually, after a year and a half, I hit it big. I was with a producer who was doing an Iggy Pop record, and he went to the Grammys and won 3 Grammys for Bonnie Raitt, Nick of Time, and one song on the B-52s record called Love Shack. And then he got called to do Elton John records, so he asked me. He got called to do Bob Seger. He asked me. He got called to do Bob Dylan, and on and on and on. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, this guy Aronoff is an amazing session drummer. And so everybody was calling me from all over the country, if not the world. And I had another career launch, and this eventually led me to playing with John Fogerty. I was the 30th drummer at the end of a 5-year recording session for his Blue Moon Swamp record, and I was the 30th guy. I didn't know that until he told me. He said, I've been you're the drummer I've been looking for my whole life. And so I've been playing with him ever since.
So my understanding is while Mellencamp was always looking for a new sound to go with his music, Fogerty was more of a perfectionist, right?
Unbelievable. But yeah, really, really, like he would even tune my snare drum and kick drum, and he was very clear about what head, what beater, how to pack a packing blanket and put it in the bass drum a certain way. I'd never seen anything like it. And we would record, a guy like me, those type of songs, I can get it in 1, 2, 3, or 4 takes. But this guy would record the same song 2 times, go in, listen to it, go back, record 2 more, go in, listen to it, record. We do that process for 3.5 hours, have a lunch break, then do another song. And so at the end of the day, John said, I really like what you did. Come back tomorrow. I came back tomorrow, and I went, wow, what songs are we going to do today? And the engineer said, we're going to do the same 2 songs. I went, really? Okay. Did that. I went, well, I'm very competitive, like I'm sure you can identify. You're the same way. I'm like, well, I'm sure I can do this better. And I kept doing it, and we came back Wednesday, same 2 songs. Thursday, same 2 songs. Friday, same 2 songs. I mean, I was losing my mind. These are simple songs, but there was something John was looking for, or a process he wanted to go through to get something. And you know what? As a drummer, I listen, I learn. I lead because I'm a drummer, but I'm not the boss. He's the boss. If he wants me to play a song 8 million times, I have to do it. And a lot of drummers walked out. They just said, this is not fun. I don't need this. I, on the other hand, thought, wow, maybe I can do it better. And that's where John went, yeah, I like this guy. And I've been on every record ever since.
My wife and I saw you play recently with Fogerty in Vegas, and it was a very great show, by the way.
Thank you.
And one thing we noticed is how intense of a drummer you are. And of course, according to my wife, this is my wife's, she knows how extremely fit you are. I mean, after all, drumming is 100% energy. So my wife would like to know, since you're not a spring chicken anymore, how do you stay so fit?
Well, I have 8 steps to staying, physically healthy, which affects you mentally and emotionally. And the first one is lifting weights, which keeps your hormone levels up, which keeps you young, and also fights off, diseases, especially the big 3, diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. Number 2 is cardio, which exercises the most important muscle in your body, the heart, and also keeps your hormone levels up. Number 3 is stretching, so you have flexibility. Number 4 is diet, which I could spend, hours on. It's more like what you don't eat. I look in the mirror. I see how I'm doing. I look at my muscle tone. I don't like the way I look. And so I do something about it. And it's through diet and exercise is the biggest thing. Number 5 is supplements, and because I travel so much, and also because I push myself so hard, I take vitamins. And my actual physician, doctor, is into longevity and trying to stay young and fit. And so I take a very, very great multivitamin. It has everything in it, and plus I take lots of fish oil, and I take a lot of vitamin D3, and I keep going on and on. I take super green fruit in the morning with a vegan protein powder, sometimes with a whey protein powder, coconut milk with no sugar in it, berries, which are antioxidants that fight off these illnesses and keep your immune system up. So supplements are a big part. Number 6 is water, and water is, I don't drink enough of it, but it is, every organ in your body needs it, and if you don't get water after 3 days, you die. It's that simple. So water is huge. And then number 7 is sleep, which the magic number is 7 hours. I'm not the greatest sleeper, but I try to get 7 hours, even if it's waking up 5 times. I go back to sleep. Sometimes I wake up and read and then go back to sleep because I realize I operate better like that. And also, the sleep part of your day is repairing your mind and your body. And then the final one, which I don't do that enough of, is meditation. So what I tell people, if you're really stressing out, you need to meditate, because stress will make you ill so fast. It's like somebody telling you something that, an example is somebody telling you something that's really shocking or very, very scary, and it can make you feel ill and weak and, freaked out. And so that's an example of how, stress or a mental thought can really bring you down. Meditation will smooth a lot of that out and calm you down so you can get back on track. So those are the 8 things, and, I'm always constantly trying to improve, my stamina and my strength.
Well, I'll tell you, you don't look your age at all, so congratulations to you. But here's what I want to know, because, my doctorate's in educational psychology, so it's all about learning theory and creativity. Yeah. What I want to know is, how you're all able to keep all this in your head, because you have an incredibly intense schedule. And I've tried to get stuff from you, and you're busy, man. You are traveling. You're jumping from artist to artist, gig to gig, changing music styles constantly. Yeah. You're shifting gears like every hour or two. And so you do this so frequently. How are you able to keep all this in your head, man? I mean, and just shift performers and then just start playing. I mean, how do you mentally prepare for all this, and how often do you practice? Do you have to practice anymore?
Well, I should. I have a thing I call functional practicing, and I haven't been doing it right now because I've been catching up with, editing a book, starting a documentary, recording sessions. But I'll practice today because I got to get ready for recording on Sunday and on the Zeppelin thing. I have a 30-minute routine that I designed specifically for myself that is very, very structured, and every note is everything has a purpose. And so I can get a lot done in a very short period of time. That's one thing. Excuse me. And as far as keeping everything straight, I think, thank God I'm wired that way, where I get stimulated. There's no, I take on more and more. There are moments where I'm overwhelmed, like at 4 or 5 in the morning when your caffeine's gone, dopamine, serotonin levels are down, anything stimulant is gone. You're like going, oh my God, what am I doing? But I get excited about doing more and more and more, and I've managed and learned how to take on more and more, compartmentalize, and keep it all going. I take a lot of notes. It's weird. There's no. It's just constantly adding more on top of it, this on top of that, and I've learned, like, it's almost like a piece of. If you look at a pie, and when you're young, maybe there's 20 slivers. Well, right now that pie has got 1 billion slivers, and every sliver is another thing I need to focus on, and I'm able to. My brain go flying around that pie at every sliver and examine, and if one sliver comes up to remind me, you got to deal with this now, I deal with it. Like I was doing with you with the paper. I mean, juggling. I'm on the plane. I'm writing it. I land. I do this, then I have to do that, and then it's pretty complex. I could use an assistant, and I'm about to figure that out to handle stuff that I don't need to do.
Well, it's obvious you're very confident, and so let's shift gears here a minute. You professionally speak also, and you talk about gaining confidence in both personal and professional life. Mm-hmm. What lessons can people take away from you to help them become better leaders, managers, artists, teachers, mechanics, whatever?
Wow, that's a short, simple question that could take up a long time, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. Well, I think it's very, very important for everybody to, first of all, know thyself. Really know who you are, and that's, of course, a lifelong, journey. But the more you know yourself, it starts there. Then you can be true to yourself and be who you are. Obviously, we all work for people, and so there are compromises you make. But we should always be learning to know, who am I really, and so that you can express that wherever you go and whatever you do, be yourself, because that's where you're going to come off more authentic and genuine. People are going to look at you, and they do that with me. They go like, I look and act the same way. What I wear, how I act on stage, off stage, it's all the same. I am this guy. And that didn't come overnight, but we're born like that. But I think that you have to, through the challenges of living, you have to realize that you have something to offer that nobody else can, because we're all different. We're all just look different. We're wired different. That's our strongest thing. Okay, as far as confidence, the more you accept who you are and believe in yourself, the more confident you will be to express that to people and be able to deal with adversity and, all kinds of negative things. And I tell people, look, the negative stuff is out there. You're going to get scammed. You're going to get screwed. You're going to get made fun of. You're going to get fired. You're going to get hired. All these things. I say, just hug them, embrace them, man. It's just part of life. If anybody's sitting there crying and going, woe is me, they don't understand that this is just normal life stuff. Your house can burn down. You get in a car accident. You get an illness. Stuff happens, man. It just happens. My thing is persevere and keep going anyway. It's like the running back in football, man. Does he get it? The best running back doesn't get a touchdown every time he gets the ball. He fumbles. He goes negative 2 yards. He gets 5 yards. Some guy breaks his leg. It's part of football, man. All he's focusing on is, I want to get into the end zone. That's him serving the song, serving the team. His job is to get into the end zone. His whole career, play by play, game by game, season by season, until his career is over. So, if you knowing thyself and feeling confident those are very important things. It's that you don't learn it overnight, but realize how valuable it is. And as being a team player, you have to be able to keep your ego in check and realize that, because we all play on teams, even if you're in a corporation and you're in the marketing department, or if you're in a corporation and you're in the sales department, you're part of a group of people, and the better the team works, the more successful they will be, because teams are greater than individuals. The greatest bands, like a band like U2, is a team. They realized that they do better as a group, just like Mick Jagger knows that he can only sell out the House of Blues by himself, but the Rolling Stones can sell out stadiums wherever they go, and that's a fact. And he understands the team. Rolling Stones is bigger than the individual, so he serves the team, and that's what I talk about. But within that, there are different areas of being a team player, which is like serving the team. The other is being creative. Everybody in the planet is creative, whether you realize it or not, because you are different than anybody else, and you have something to offer to the team that nobody else can. And it's there. Just dig deep. And the third thing is you have to always be trying to get better. Like think about this. All right, the Beatles, in the music terms, Beatles had Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sgt. Pepper's, Magical Mystery, Sgt. Pepper's and Magical Mystery Tour. Those 4 albums, completely different styles, different sounds. They made it in 1 year and 11 months. That's because they were constantly trying to get better, and that's how they put out that many iconic records with 55 singles in that short a time. So I'm constantly trying to get better. John Fogerty was constantly trying to get better. Sting is trying to get better. These people are trying to get better, and in getting better, you serve the team because you're always improving, and it helps the team. So that's kind of my teamwork, speech, I guess, in a nutshell. And there's one other thing, a component that I like to teach people, and that is, and it's made me successful. I started asking myself, why Kenny Aronoff? I mean, I was wondering, why do I get hired? The reason why I asked that was I want to keep getting hired. So what is it? I mean, it's not just drumming. It's something else. And then I started realizing it was, communication skills, my ability to get along with all these different people. You mentioned me flying there and flying here. Next thing you know, I'm on TV, then I'm acting, then I'm on a podcast, then I'm in a session with B.B. King, but the next day I'm with Elton John, the next day I'm with Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath, the next day I'm with Avril Lavigne. How do you adjust? Well, the communication skills, the ability to get along with people and fit in and motivate the room and motivate the team and help the producer do his job, that's huge. That they want me back because this guy makes the entire session go better. And so communication skills is a big one.
Okay, so you talked a bit about creativity a minute ago. Music is obviously a very creative endeavor. So how do you stay creative? Do you have any tricks or secrets?
God, fear. Fear of failure. I mean, with Mellencamp, that was the ultimate fear because we had budgets back then. He was always trying to come up with something different, but still, fit into the genre of Mellencamp. And he managed that, but he demanded creativity from us. And it was scary because he'd play a song that sounded like all the other songs he'd written, and he admitted it. I write the same song. So what I had to do is think out of the box. So if he's playing a song that sounds like, just a regular old, Bob Dylan type song, I started thinking of groups like Peter Gabriel or Hendrix or any completely out of the box and see if there was something I could grab from that type of music and bring it into the simplicity of John Mellencamp. That's how I did it. Or constantly, researching, listening to different types of music. I used to have this thing called the Book of Beats. I'd listen to all kinds of records and write down the beats so that when John would play a song, I'd be like, God, I can't. If I played the obvious beat, it would be like, you've heard it a million times. and he was looking for something he'd never heard, but yet simple. That was a challenge, and I think you just, like I explained it, you do research, you think out of the box, think of weird things that have nothing to do with what you're doing, and see if you can grab it, even if it's an emotion, from that and bring it into the team.
Was writing a book difficult for you? Because I know the first version was 600 pages when you submitted it, and then the publisher wanted 300, so you had to edit it. So was that difficult for you? I mean, being a drummer?
It was a pain in the butt, because I originally didn't want to write the book, intuitively knowing this was going to be difficult. But the guy made it sound like, oh no, you just dictate to me and it's going to be an Oscar. It wasn't, and as you well know, what happened was. Yeah, and I'm going through that process right now. A ghostwriter can never, or co-writer can never speak in your voice. So, and I got a distinctive personality, so I started going back and going, no, this is horrible. And I started editing, and I had to learn how to write. I wouldn't consider myself a genius, but I can at least get rid of the corny, wasted words, and tell the story so it has the right feel, and then the editor, they polish it up, as you well know. This was a whole new process for me, and it took 4 years. And at one point, I called up the publisher and I wanted to buy the book back. The little teeny advance he gave me, I wanted to buy it back and bury it, and he talked me off the ledge. And even the cover, the book was 6 months, 2 weeks late on delivery. But the cover, I held my ground. I said, the day that I had to make the final decision about the cover, I went, nope, I don't like this cover. I never have liked it. And they said, well, the publisher said, we think it's pretty good. And I went, let me put it this way. I'm not Mick Jagger. He's obviously just iconic rock star. But I want what Mick Jagger would like, and he wouldn't like this cover. And they couldn't believe it, and I changed it. And I mean, every time I see that cover, I'm like, yes, I love that cover. The picture is black and white for those listening, but originally it was in color. And they had the fonts, the title. It looks so corny, and I feel like I got with an artist recommended to me from this woman, and it was fantastic. He immediately knew what to do. And this was a long process. And the only reason why I'm writing another book is because I wanted what I'm writing now about in this original book, but obviously they already cut out 300 pages. There was no room for this stuff. And that is some of the stuff we've been talking about, how I've lived my life loud and refused to die on the vine. That's basically it. I'm taking the bull by the horns and getting as much out of this life as I can possibly get until I die. And I refuse to just lay low and just let life pass over me. And I feel in my heart that the people who are capable of doing great work and purposely choose to do nothing and be lazy or wait for stuff is they're not helping themselves, and they're really not helping the team being society in the world. We all should do the best we can so that it brings the level of humanity up, and I think this is an important thing to spread around, and that's what made me get where I am.
Okay, so it's time for the lightning round. I do this with all my guests. So I'm going to give you an either-or, a couple of different words, and you pick one. The first one that comes to your mind, okay?
Okay.
Don't dwell on it. Just pick one. Ready?
Yep.
Phone call or text?
Phone call.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Wow. Sunrise coming from a rock and roll star.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean I see it.
Television shows or movies?
Movies.
Facebook or Twitter?
Twitter.
Toilet paper, over or under?
What was the last one?
Over or under on toilet paper?
Oh, that's great. Over, because I got yelled at so many times by an ex-girlfriend for putting it under. So it's over.
Grilled or pan-fried?
Grilled.
High-tech or low-tech?
that high tech or low tech?
Yeah, high tech or low tech?
Low tech, I guess.
Well, you're a drummer. I would expect low tech.
Yeah.
Nickelback or the Stones?
Stones.
Wow, that didn't take you long.
Yep.
Call of Duty or Pac-Man?
Pac-Man.
Sweet or salty?
Oh, salty, I guess. Yep.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Ooh, Star Wars.
Kenny, I want to thank you, man, for taking the time you spent with me today. Let me end the show by asking you this question, because you've already touched on it. You've been quoted in the past as saying, despite how much talent you may have, it still took Mellencamp giving you a chance and a number of other people regularly believing in you enough to give you work. So even though today, through modern technology, someone can easily create their own stuff, it still takes a team of people to make it all work. Why is having a team so important?
Oh, man. Because teams are greater than the individuals. It's just that simple. I mean, Magic Johnson being this incredible basketball player, he was one of the, he knew that, it was the team that was going to win the NBA title, not him. He's just part of the team, and that was what made him so dangerous, is that people they all knew, he could pass, dribble, or shoot, but what they were afraid of was that he knew what to do for the team at any given moment to make it win. So I just think that, understanding that is really important. You have to do your job, and you have to focus on what you do, but you have to then step back and think about how this applies and benefits the team, whether it's relationships, work, or anything.
Thanks, Kenny. Man, all I can say is that you literally rock. And as for our listeners, if you want to connect with Kenny, you can do so through his website, Kenny Aronoff. That's Kenny, KennyAronoff.com. Also, you will have a chance to hear Kenny both talk and play at our 9th annual Celebrate Innovation Week, CI Week, in early March. Go to CI Week Experience for more information on that. And thank all of you for listening and taking a step beyond with us. Talent often provides a conduit for creativity to grow, expand, and flourish, as in the case with Kenny and his drums. But sometimes following your passion based on that talent will open other doors, like it has for Kenny, who now, through his speaking and writing, tries to help others gain the confidence they need to help them realize their talents and how to develop the passion. And this is all about passion, to use them for good. I hope you'll continue to listen to A Step Beyond and become inspired to be the very best version of yourself. I'm your host, Anthony Postian. Follow your dreams.
Thanks for listening to A Step Beyond. Take a moment, if you would, and leave a review on iTunes and share the podcast with those who need to be inspired to become more creative and imaginative in everything they do.